perhaps less support for the standard bus service, but we may not need the standard bus service anymore.
But I also, just quickly, I also think that what happens is, what the rich start with, the technology, all that stuff becomes cheaper, easier to produce, and starts to work its way down. I mean, it's trickle-down technology, but once those things exist, it's hard to keep that genie in that model. It sort of dissipates downwards.
Smartphones, for example, were incredibly expensive a few years ago. I didn't buy one for a very long time because I simply didn't want to pay the money for it. Now, or computers, for example, and there are still people who need to go to the library to use a computer, but that's happening less and less.
But they also come up with discount ways to pay over time.
Okay.
Just to throw away a monkey wrench into driverless cars. out of the information security business, keeping trackers out of driverless cars. We don't have the infrastructure today for security to protect the enterprises that exist.
To be fair,
to protect an
this is
enterprise like that.
See this? Go ahead.
That's going to require a lot of people working in computer incident response as we're trying to prevent somebody from taking over a car, kidnapping people automatically.
We actually have that problem with cars now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The implicit problem is over here. You can hijack a car right now. You don't need it to be driverless. If you want to hack a car, you can go and hack a car today and you can crash it if you feel like it. Today, your cars are not safe. So it's a moot point. It's already, the genie's already out of the model in that point.
And by the way, those Tesla cars that go to DevCon, which is a hacker conference each year, precisely to get the hackers engaged in this.
One of the things about the driverless car is the same as lots of automated technologies. What happens when all those jobs disappear?
See, that's the
What happened when all of the elevator operators disappeared? I understand that 70,000 or something disappeared in New York in a few months a year.
bookstores, we really needed them anyway, right?
Well, do you really need people to run the elevator?
Well, except the question is not so much do we need the people, but will there be enough
jobs
for the people who are...
But what happened to all those people? Are they out there begging in the streets?
Some of them were.
The fact is, in the United States, we destroy about 1 million jobs every month. That's the normal thing. 12 to 15 million jobs, and then we have to normally we replace them.
Yeah, but usually with people who are younger.
Yes.
And lesser jobs that pay less.
Oh, not necessarily. You know, these things are not as simple as the politicians try to make them. We've been dealing with this problem now for 250 years.
Thousands elsewhere.
No, 250 years since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, but
What about all the people? 80% of the people used to work on the land. Where are they now?
No, but even with the land, the first guy who hooked a horse to a plow instead of
Well, you might go back on.
technology, Joe, after the job.
Yeah, but the speed of change has been a doubling every 50 years since it's about 1750. We're still here, we adjust.
So I guess my question is not so much driverless cars. You're talking about putting your children into a driverless car and being a suburban parent. My question is how long can you afford to be a suburban parent? Because you brought up the Airbnb problem in San Francisco. It's also a problem here. I mean, properties in Boston have been expensive for a long time, and now you have properties in neighborhoods that were considered terribly great, going for double, triple, quadruple what they were before. And now we don't live in the city anymore.
Well, that's just what the implicator. That's another thing that as writers we need to think about is when we create a new technology, we not only have to think about how it changes the psychology, but how it changes the economics, the way of life of a place. And if you don't think all those things through, you're not doing the job as a writer. Yes.
I'm actually interested not so much in technology, but in how people are going to be involved in the CRISPR technology and then design people. And eliminate a whole class of people. There's just
Or create.
huge implications there to me. There won't be any deaf people in the future.
That's already become a political issue.
Yeah.
The cochlear implant there was a lot of discussion around that
Okay.
because there was an entire culture that suddenly felt it was being erased by
Yeah,
community.
Yes.
And I can see the point. It's like, I see your point, you know, it's,
If somebody doesn't want to be deaf, and we can take care of them, we should.
I agree, but I also understood the cultural impact. But it seemed odd for that reason, because it was like, why would you defend the loss of sense? But a culture that arisen around something. But again, it just goes to the fact that there's so many effects to this stuff.
I think, and part of it is also, just to throw in this, part of the problem with the, first of all, until recent, I don't know where the science is now, the cochlear implants weren't that great. They helped some people, they did not help everybody, and the deaf community, for many, many generations, had been suppressed. They've been sent to schools in their hands tied so they wouldn't sign. And so there is, I mean, I took interpreting at some point, so I'm a little bit familiar with this. And so there is a very deep distrust in the deaf capital D community about so-called, oh, we're going to give you this, and you won't have to sign anymore. And they do have a whole culture around that. So until it is absolutely proved that absolutely no one has to be deaf, and it isn't just oh, we're going to make you look normal, rather than look funny because you're signing, rather than, you know, so that's where there was a lot, that's where the politics was. It wasn't that they didn't want people to hear. It's that they didn't trust a lot of what was being said.
And there's a consent issue around it too, when decisions about someone's body are being made usually by their parents rather than themselves. And it's not like a 2-year-old can give you informed consent about whether they would prefer to be deaf and to partake in deaf culture versus have a cochlear implant, which would be great for them and maybe really terrible, but you don't know. And the child isn't given the opportunity to really say anything about it.
Can you guys just comment really quickly on how you think technology will affect the military, like not just the drones, but there was a $35 program that shot down here for the pilot?
I'm sorry?
$35 program?
Yeah, in the news there was an Air Force, there was like a test where they tested out a program to a drone, and the simulations in mock air combats, it beat the Air Force pilot.
Oh, sure, of course.
So
what's the question on that?
General comments about how you think technology will affect the military.
Well, you know,
Oh, wait, what are we talking about again? A $35 program that does what?
the technology of war
Yeah.
advancing to the point that there's a movie on with Ethan Hawke now where he sits in a room with a bunch of other drone pilots. And,
Right.
and it's dealing with this moral crisis over I'm pushing buttons and murdering people. And do I blow up these 6 guys when there's a 3-year-old standing next to them? And the guy telling me yes. And to me, what happens is there's so much disassociation in the world already. I feel like I talk to more of my friends at a greater distance and know more about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, but I'm seeing less of them. I'm not in a room with people as much as I used to be. And war is the same thing. At the point that you don't actually need to face someone you're killing becomes, I think, much easier until you realize the scale of which you're killing.
Actually, it's pointing in. I was watching Eye in the Sky because I like to watch Helen Mirren. Anyway, it's going to be a very good movie. There, what you're going to do is the opposite. Once upon a time, a pilot was up 30,000 feet and he dropped the bomb. Now he's got the camera and he can see there's a little girl there. The whole thing revolves around whether or not it's correct to fire when that little girl is there, because if they can also prevent a suicide bombing, which the people are preparing to do inside. Well, he can see it. So it's just the opposite of what you're talking about.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, but that's true. You're right. You can zoom in, you can actually see them sweat before you blow them up. I think it again, it's that it changes us. You know, technology doesn't just change how things are done, it changes how we see things and whether or not things get done. I think that's a,
We've been given a 5-minute warning, so what I'd like to do is go through the panel and see if anyone has any last thoughts about the subject.
Well, just to build on what they said, I mean, the hot front in the war right now is actually what he said is InfoSec. I mean, because you have stuff like you have something like Stuxnet, which turns out to be, which unfortunately turns out to be a great example of how infiltration in cyberspace ends up having very real ramifications in meat space. So you can have, so now you can have cyber attacks that say shut down the power grid, which is not a good thing. But I think how we conduct wars. I mean, not necessarily. I mean, not just the future, but possibly in the present. It would probably be along those lines.
I regret that we didn't have time to talk about augmented reality very much, which is one of my favorite up-and-coming technologies. And essentially what you're going to see is a merging of digital and physical worlds in such a way that they're always kind of the same thing as far as you perceive. And I think that will change us in a lot of ways that we cannot yet predict, in the same way that we really couldn't have predicted wildcats before they actually happened. I mean, did you predict wildcats? You can't. There are all of these weird emergent things that come up, and there's just no way to know. I'm so sorry.
Well, I would think, technologies come along, people exploit them, they do some things that we like, some things we don't. That's the way it always will be, and that's what science fiction's all about.
I just think everything we changes. Back to David Butler, but I find it fascinating. My first story was about, said 50 years ago, future published story. And it was about this guy who has to defend 2 men who have been arrested for having sex with a robot that looks like an 8-year-old girl. And the question is, what are they doing? Is it a sex toy? Is it child molestation? And he gets them off, and then the courtroom gets blown up by protesters. But the point that made me write the story was just that it changes our perception of things. We look at things differently. You're right. You do have to see who you're killing now with drones. And that wasn't, when you dropped the bomb on Nagasaki, no one saw anyone in Nagasaki, you saw the town. But you're right. Now we've got satellite lenses. We can watch them sweat before we blow them up. And I think all of those things have more profound effect on us than we think they do when they begin. And then we have to change, and it's a feedback loop. That changes us, we change it back. It's, in a way, us trying to find the balance of who we are that we still recognize.
I would just say technology is just allowing us to become more and more human. We're not different, we're just doing the same old human things more efficiently than we did before.
Asshole and a bastard.
Yeah.
Wider than ever before.
Yeah.
That's it, that you just described Twitter.
All social media, actually.
We never even got into the whole social media thing.
Yeah. Oh, I know. In the future, we could have done this at high speed. We could have gotten 6 hours of conversation into 15 minutes.
We actually have 2 minutes. I have to.
Yeah, you
Yeah, you can say something.
I'm actually very sorry that we didn't get into the whole 3D thing because I didn't trust it at all. And then I tried the New York Times thing with the big cover, where I was actually in a place where they were talking to kids in a war-torn area, and it was so vivid. And I saw it, as you say, I saw them as much more human than reading about it in the New York Times. And I thought, what happened to that person? So I forget. I think some of these technologies can make us more human and more identified with the individual rather than being up in the area. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for the time.